Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, He did not end the surah just like that. And this is part of His beautiful divine methodology, brothers and sisters, is that when He does give a warning, when He gives you something of a bad news, He gives you the solution. This is something that we need to learn. He then gives the exception with regards to humanity that is going to lose inevitably, without doubt, without question. He gives the exception saying, illa, except for. And then He breaks it down into 4 categories. Illa alladhina amanu, except for those who believe. Al-Iman. What is Iman? Iman is, number one, something that is in our heart. There's not a meter or a gauge that somebody can peer into and look at and check and be able to say, so-and-so is at 50%. MashaAllah, is at 100%. This person here, they're at 10%. That's nobody's ability to peer into, to look at and to gauge. But when we look at what the ulama have given of definitions and understandings, they tell us that al-iman i'tiqadun bil-jinan. Iman is a conviction that we hold in our hearts. وَقَوْلٌ بِاللِّسَانِ, and it is professed with our speech. وَعَمْلٌ بِالْأَرْكَانِ, and it is also justified and it is demonstrated in our deeds and our actions with our body as a whole. So true Iman, it has to be seen, it has to be manifested in some way, shape or form. And what we're also told by the ulama is that true Iman, it is basically founded upon the foundation of knowledge. So in Islam, Iman is the result of authentic Islamic knowledge. And so Allah Azza wa Jal, in mentioning the first category, is pointing out to the imperativeness of learning. And mind you, we're talking about in the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, a people who, even though they knew the Prophet alayhi salatu wasallam, they had not seen anything bad about him, they had not heard anything bad about him, they only knew good from him. And with that, they were listening to what shaitan was whispering to them of falsities. And they are hearing from him the Quran. He is the one that, even though they are abusing him, they are wronging him, what is he doing? He's calling them to Allah Azza wa Jal. He is calling them to Allah's mercy and forgiveness, to guidance. He is calling them to that which is going to save them in this life and eternally grant them salvation in the next. He is teaching them. But one of the things that's essential for somebody to learn is that they need to humble themselves and they need to be willing to learn. You can't force anybody to learn. We know that unfortunately there's still something of this practice among Muslims when they teach their children Quran, or they'll send their child to a Quran school, that they'll beat them, right? Right? Have you heard of that? Where the Maulana will have a stick or a belt or something. And if the kid doesn't learn or read like he's supposed to or have done, whack! Well, maybe that might work. But the long-term effects are a totally different thing. But with adults, you can't force them. You cannot force them to learn. It's got to be intentional, it's got to be voluntary, and that's where Iman cannot be coerced. True Iman, it has to be a personal choice and decision. And when a person chooses of their own to believe, and we know that from the pillars of Iman are those 6 pillars, al-Imanu billahi subhanahu wa ta'ala wa bi-malaikatihi wa kutubihi wa rusulihi wal yawmil akhir wa bil qadri khayrihi wa sharrihi. That a believer is to learn about these pillars of faith. وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. Knowledge is not something that is just some intellectual exercise. Islamic knowledge is something that is not something that you just store and keep for yourself. But true knowledge, it has to bear fruit. And this is where that second category is mentioned. وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ, and that they do what? What types of deeds? Righteous, wholesome, good deeds, beneficial deeds. And this is where we see that the ummah of the Prophet ﷺ, even though they were so few and they were under persecution, it did not prevent them as believers from coming together collectively as well as individually, putting their faith to practice. We find that they were caring for those who were weak among them, that they were seeking to emancipate slaves, purchasing their freedom, providing for orphans, helping women, those who were widowed. They did not look at their circumstances and the challenges they faced and said, oh my God, we can't do this. They realized that if they had faith in Allah Azza wa Jal, and they knew that there was a mission they had to live life with, there was a purpose, and they were living a purpose-driven life, that regardless of what's happening out there, their focus was clear. And with these two things, what we also come to understand is that Allah Azza wa Jal is drawing the focus to the person themselves. That inwardly we need to always, every one of us, pay attention to ourselves. That when every single one of us as individuals focuses on self-development and self-refinement and self-improvement for Allah Rabbul Alameen, then when we come together as individuals and form a group, you're going to find that alhamdulillah, the group becomes blessed. And that's where the next two categories come into, focusing on the collective communal perspective. وَتَوَاسَوْا بِالْحَقِّ. At-tawasi, the verb form that is there, is talking about a reciprocated two-way approach. Not one-sided. That the believers as a whole, regardless of what background they came from, because back in the time of Mecca you had those that were nobles and those that were not. You had those that were chieftains and those that were followers. You had those that were from the family of the Prophet ﷺ and those that weren't. You had those that were free and those that were slaves. Once they believed and they lived righteously, that mutual exhortation to truth, it made no difference with regards to what differences they may have had. Islam, it does away with those things. Those superficial things that prior to Islam divide people, Islam does away with them. Well, what is al-haqq? Al-iman, and all that we are supposed to learn from belief is haqq, is truth. That Allah Azza wa Jal is one, that He has given us the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam as the final prophet and messenger, that is also haqq, truth. That He has given him the final revelation of the Quran, that is also haqq. That there is accountability for the way that we live our lives is also haqq. That those who believe and they live good with Allah Azza wa Jal, that there is on Judgment Day salvation for them, that is also haqq. And for those who choose other than the path of Allah Rabbul Alameen and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that there's also the opposite of paradise, there is Jahannam, Allah save us from it. That is also haqq. To remind each other, to educate each other, to support each other, to propagate that in the larger setting. وَتَوَاسَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. As believers, as human beings, there's going to be things that we're not going to perhaps like about each other. Even though we're Muslims, the Sahaba ridwanullahi alayhim, personalities are personalities. Shaitan is going to come and he's going to try to separate us. Divide and conquer is his age-old method and tactic. That is his strategy. Divide and conquer, divide and conquer, divide and conquer. but we're supposed to be what? Tawasaw bil sabr. The ulama, Ibn al-Qayyim rahmatullahi alayhi, tells us that sabr is 3 categories. First, as-sabru ala ta'atillah, to be patient and persevere while we are obeying Allah Azza wa Jal. Wa-sabru an ma'siyatillah, that we are patient and persevere to not sin. That we are strong in not sinning. That we're holding on the straight and narrow. Wa-sabru inda shada'id. The third is being patient and persevering through whatever hard times and difficulties that we face. Jama'ah, when we look at the Prophet ﷺ and his ummah in our time too, what we'll find is this, and I'm concluding. We saw how much he suffered of another 10 years in Mecca, and then the remainder of the 10 years of what he suffered struggling with the believers in Medina. One of the things that we fail to look at as Muslims is the opportunity costs of things. Where do you think Islam would be had the believers, had the people in Mecca as a whole believed and said, you know what? Yes, you are Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Amanna wa saddaqna. We believe, we confess to this truth. Where do you think Islam would have been? And we look at it today. Perhaps the earth as a whole would have come to Islam because the conflicts that were there from the beginning would not have stymied, it would not have halted, it would not have limited the greatness of what Allah has given us of guidance. Well, how about within our lives today? Conflicts are also destructive. The conflicts that take place within the home, the conflicts that take place within the community, the conflicts that take place within our ummah. If we were to understand this surah and bring ourselves back to what Allah Rabbul Alameen is calling us to, imagine the progress, imagine the success, imagine the blessedness of what Allah Azza wa Jal can and will make happen. But it's a choice for us. And that's why this chapter is so important, that the Sahaba Ridwanullahi alayhim, when they met each other before they departed, they would read the surah to each other, reminding them that this is a covenant from Allah Rabbul Alameen. Each one of us has the obligation to believe it, to act upon it, to make the most of it. And I pray that Allah Azza wa Jal bless us to be from those people. Allahumma ameen. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala nabiyyina